All right, everyone, finishing up the notes for Chapter 2, this time around starting with Section 3 of the notes and continuing on right through the very end. Two things are essential when exercising your voice. First off, you need to have a deep breath with good breath control so that you can get out everything that you want to get out, that you have enough power and enough endurance to be able to say what it is you need to say in a particular thought. And then, of course, you need to make a sound. That's what we're doing here. We're lending our voice to the particular script that we have. So, breath control plus actually get the sound out in the way that we want to get it out. Proper exercise and maintenance of your vocal cords will provide greater endurance and stronger performance. Think about it just like if you were someone that's into physical fitness. You do a lot of cardio. You do a lot of running. You run marathons. Maybe you do weightlifting. You don't just decide one day that you're going to bench 300 pounds and go to the gym and lift a set of weights. You're going to kill yourself doing that. You have to build yourself up and get to the point where you can do that 300-pound lift. And it takes time. It takes practice. And the more you practice, the more you do it, the stronger you get. Same thing with exercise and maintenance of your vocal cords. A couple of things that influence us in the way that we speak. First off, there's cultural and regional speech patterns. And we're not just talking about accents here. Accents do play a role in that, but we're also talking about different phraseologies. For example, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and, where y'all say y'all, in Pittsburgh, we say yins, and we have a lot of other words that we have for different things and the ways that we say certain words. Not uncommon to hear a Pittsburgher on the street say a sentence like, "Hey, yins want to go downtown for a sandwich and that and go catch the Steelers game." That's normal speech in Pittsburgh. Family attitudes and speaking habits also play into how we normally speak. We pick up the habits of our parents, our siblings, aunts and uncles. So those things do have a mark on us in the way that we talk normally. Sometimes it's not the correct thing to do, and it's not correct always for the type of character that we're trying to play. So if you have bad habits that you need to break, know that it's going to take time. It's going to take practice. It's going to take discipline. Changing a habit takes approximately 21 days and at least 200 repetitions. And then after that, it takes another 14 days or so for a new habit pattern to become established in the mind. So we're breaking old habits and we're trying to create new, good, positive habits. It takes time. It takes discipline. It takes effort. Warming up, just like any other physical regimen, is important. If you're running a marathon, you don't just go up to the start line and start running. You stretch, you maybe jog in place for a little bit. You get yourself prepared for the 26.2-mile journey. Warming up prepares your muscles for the stress to come because we are stressing our voice out as we use it in the recording booth. Warming up your voice can also prepare your body and mind for your performance. So yeah, we're warming things up physically. We're getting our vocal cords ready. We're making sure we're doing our proper breathing and all of that. But it also helps to put you in a certain place mentally. It allows you to try to connect with the character that you're reading or the purpose of the script that you're reading. It helps you to relax, and to de-stress, to get the rest of the world out of the way so that you can focus on what it is that you're doing. Helpful for both body and mind to warm up before actually going in to do the work. So we'll do some of the exercises in the book as we get together. I encourage you to take a look at those, practice a few of them, see if there's some that you like in particular. Some physical attitudes to help delivery. We're going to use the acronym MOVE, M-O-V-E, and we'll explain what that is in a minute. The degree of physical energy you use when performing will have a direct relation to the effectiveness and believability of your performance. So we encourage people when they're in the studio, even though people aren't going to see you moving. I mean, the producer is going to see you moving when you're in the recording studio, but those that listen to you aren't going to see you move. Nevertheless, movement helps you to be able to perform at your best and get the proper emotion and get the proper strength to the voice that you are giving. You do, however, need to keep your head at a consistent distance from the microphone without moving it too much. But from the neck down, it's anything goes. And as long as there is no clothing noise, you don't make any unwanted sounds, you can flail your arms, you can move your feet, you can move your hips around, do whatever you need to do. As long as you're close enough to the mic to keep a consistent performance, everything is in play. Body movement is an expression of emotion. Move your body in whatever manner works for you to effectively get to the core emotion of the message. Think about when you're talking with a friend or a family member and you're excited about something. Do you just stand still and talk about the amazing thing that happened to you or that you experienced? No, most likely you're going to have vivid facial expressions. You're going to have dynamic movement of your hands as you gesture. The way that we move our bodies helps us to be able to vocalize the expression that is also being shown by the movement of the body. So what does MOVE stand for? Your movement orchestrates your vocal expression. Your movement orchestrates your vocal expression. Another exercise in the book that we'll do when we get together, and I encourage you to take a look at this and practice this. It's the idea of taking a particular sentence and saying it in different ways and seeing how the stance of your body helps you to say those things in different ways, the impact that it has. So take a look at that before we get together. So not only does the way we move our bodies help us with our vocal performance, but the way that we stand can affect our vocal performance as well. 5 different stances that we're going to take a look at and explain what they can do for us or how they can impact us. First off, the at ease stand. This is where you have your arms behind your back and you clasp your hands together. This can show a certain amount of nervousness or the sense of feeling uncomfortable, maybe like you're in an awkward situation of one type or another. You're searching for the right words in a situation, you don't quite know what to say, that sort of thing. What happens in this stance, you wind up having very minimal body movement, and it results in a stiffer sound with a restricted range of inflection and character. Sometimes it's appropriate to do that, and this stance can help you to sound kind of awkward and unsure. But if you're doing it and that's not what your character calls for, it can make your vocal performance less than what it could be. The attention stance, straight, stiff body with hands at the sides. This implies authority, control, and command of a situation. Someone that's a little more confident in what they are saying and what they are doing. But it could also be a cover-up for an inward feeling of insecurity. Think about the bully at the playground who would assert his or her power while inside is actually covering up that they're scared as well. So that couple of things that the attention stance can do. The show me stance, arms crossed in front of you, can show self-consciousness. It can show insecurity. It can show defiance. It can show defensiveness or even a certain level of dishonesty. Kind of think of someone that looks like they're very adamant in where they are, perhaps even stubbornness. The Adam and Eve stance, hands in front of the body, something to hide, is what this portrays. It can also be useful for a speaker who projects suspicion. And finally, the hands on the hips position, the mannequin stance. This could show a speaker's inexperience. It can block the flow of energy. It can limit the ability to inject emotion or drama. It kind of creates that stiff sort of thing that the at ease stance can do as well, and show perhaps somebody that's nervous or timid, may not quite know what to do or say in a given moment. It can also be used to create an attitude of arrogance. Someone that is just trying to be a real jerk, standing there, arms on the hips, let me tell you a thing or three sort of attitude. So these stances can be helpful in certain situations, but if they're things that you do out of nervous habit, you may want to take a look at that and see how you might be able to stand or move your body differently to help you to be able to better convey a particular type of message for a particular type of need. And honestly, you can do any of these, you can do none of these, anything that works for you, whatever works to help you get your message across the way that it needs to happen, do it. Honestly, as I record these things for you, I wind up using my hands a lot. You can't see it happen, but I look like a madman conductor when I'm talking and sharing these notes with you, because it helps me to be able to express my thoughts and to get out certain words of emphasis, certain things that I think are important for you to understand. Maybe one day I'll videotape myself doing these lectures for you so you can see what I'm doing. But, there's a reason why I'm in radio and on television. We'll do some of the physical energy exercises when we get together. Take a look at those, play around with them before we do. Something else I want you to look at in the book, there's 27 tips for maintaining your voice and improving your performance. This is kind of a catch-all of different things to consider. It covers the gamut from types of beverages to drink, types of foods to eat, what sort of things to avoid in terms of certain activities, what to do if you're feeling ill or if you have a sore throat. A lot of that in this list of thoughts, tips, and tricks, and I would encourage you to look at that. There should be a handful in there that would especially speak to you and might help you to get a little more confidence in the recording booth. Now, we spent a lot of time talking about things to do, things to watch out for, how to do your breathing exercises, different ways to move your body, things to consider in terms of the ways that you speak and the sound that comes out of your mouth. And it's a pretty extensive list of things to try to keep in mind when you go into the recording studio. But you also have to keep in mind that, we're recording a voice. We're not trying to cure cancer or anything like that. No one's going to die if we do a poor performance on a certain day. So, be easy on yourself. If you make a mistake, own it, correct it, move on. If you look like a fool when you're in the recording studio because you're moving around like a madman, hey, if it gets the job done, do it. Don't be hard on yourself. Those that tend to be perfectionistic tend to not get a lot of stuff done because they're continually second-guessing themselves and trying to do something a little bit better, a little bit different, continuing on and on and on. Now, trial and error is not a bad thing, but if you get compulsive about it, you'll never get work done. A lot of times our first instinct is going to be a really good one, or something that's decided upon in consultation with a producer or a director. There's lots of different ways to interpret things that we read. The right one is going to be the one that most naturally comes out of you and fits the needs of the producer or the client. When you speak, You don't hear your own voice the same way that others hear your voice. Actually, what you're hearing is a reverberation of the sound coming through your body. You don't necessarily hear directly through your ears. You kind of hear through your bones into your inner ear. And it sounds very different from what other people hear as your sound travels through the air and reaches their ears. So the way that your voice sounds to other people is what you would hear when your voice is being played back from a recording. And if you haven't had the chance to listen to yourself in a recording, I would encourage you to do that so that you get a true sense of what your voice sounds like. Most people, when they hear their own voice through a recording the very first time, they're very shocked at what they hear because it does sound different from what they are used to hearing. And many times people don't like the sound of their voice when they hear it because they've been so used to hearing themselves in a very different way. So that may be a hurdle that a lot of you will need to get past. One final thing for this chapter, the idea of reading out loud. Now, logistically, it's important for us to read out loud whenever we have a script because we need to make sure that we know how to pronounce words, that we understand the sentence structure and the flow and the syntax and what it is that we're trying to say. Also, especially in commercial recording, we need to know how long it takes us to say something because you have 30 seconds. You have 60 seconds, however long the piece is supposed to be. If we read something to ourselves, number one, we don't hear ourselves saying it because we've talked about that. We don't get a chance to listen and pay attention to how we say things. Also, we read in our heads a lot faster than what we actually speak. It can be as much as 2 or 3 times faster the way that we read something in our minds than what we do when we actually speak it and verbalize it. So reading out loud is important from a logistical sense, but it also helps us to become better readers, better speakers as we do it more and more and practice it on a regular basis. Some ways to do that. Read anything that tells a story. Find a book, find an article, find a magazine, whatever it may be, a story on the internet. Find something that tells a compelling story. And then after your first read the story again, but with a different interpretation. Do it as a different person. Do it with a different attitude. Perhaps you use a voice that's more feminine than masculine, or vice versa. Maybe you use something that's much more excited and anxious as opposed to being subdued. Play around with it. There's lots of different ways to tell a story. Listen to the differences in how you read something in one voice as opposed to another. Practice looking for the most important elements of the story and explore different ways of making them interesting. There's a lot of ways to get to a certain point. The best one may take a little trial and error. And speaking of trial and error, you don't necessarily need to worry about getting it perfect the first time. Focus on just the experience of doing the voiceover. And if you can, video yourself doing the voiceover, because then not only do you get to hear yourself and play it back if you're just doing an audio recording, but you also look at your body language, you look at your posture and your stance, and you might be able to associate the way that you say something with the way that you were standing or gesturing, and it may guide you to do something different in your body language in order to get a different interpretation of the read. So there you go. There's the notes for Chapter 2. Hopefully you've been filling those notes in as you've been watching along. Now it's time to pull out the study questions and finish those up. Send in your notes and your study questions to me. And before we get together for our next class meeting, make sure you take the pre-class survey on Blackboard. And as always, make sure you're regularly keeping up with Blackboard and with Cougar Mail to keep up with any changes or important announcements and things like that. So a reminder, when we get together in our next class meeting, we are going to try out some of the exercises in the chapter. Hopefully you take on doing some of those beforehand. We'll talk about some of your favorite ones, some of the ones that seem weird to you, and we'll try them out in front of each other and have a little fun. See you then.